I'll just assume maybe Jenny is ill, which is fine. These things happen. Hello, everyone. This week's icebreaker was, what was your first Hello World programming experience? What did you make, or like what language did you use? Um, I'll go first. If I'm being very technical, very exact, I first wrote code for MySpace back when MySpace was a thing people used. But my first intentional like learning of programming was a Ruby like workbook, and Ruby was my first language, and I built like a thing that rendered some stuff from a server basically. I still like Ruby, but I haven't written it in years, so don't ask me to do anything. I don't know anything. And that was me. I'll go to Megan.
I had an answer and then you said MySpace and I was like, oh, wait, me too. Um, yeah, definitely lots of playing with CSS to get a super, super sweet looking theme.
Something
Um,
glittery, yeah.
yeah, or like I would do the collages. I would make a collage of photos of me and my friends and then have the like tiled background. So it's just like all these tiny little photos of tweens.
Nice.
um let's see, my actual first programming, I didn't start like officially programming until college in a CS degree, which was a bold choice on my end. But we had in my first programming class, we were learning C, and we were doing, it was some kind of like calculation thing. It was like how much toilet paper, like how many squares would you get? I don't remember what it was. It had something to do with like pulling off toilet paper rolls and like how long it could unravel for. And there was like some function that you used to calculate that. Um, and I remember feeling like a god when I got it to work, and it was great. Let's see. I will popcorn Shuveksha.
Oh, hi everyone. So, talking about first Hello World programming, mine was in QBasic when I was in grade 8 in school. That was in 2002, almost 22 years ago. And it was like simple basics like to print tables, to check with like what if it's a prime number or not. And after that, like I learned Fortran, then C programming, then PHP in high school. Then life took me in different direction. And in 2020, I revisited my childhood passion and started learning JavaScript. So while doing so, I built a calculator as one of my first project. Thank you.
I love that. Who's going next?
I'll popcorn to Doribel.
Hello, everybody. So my first experience with Hello World was actually not that long ago. It was in 2023. I attended a General Assembly free workshop on HTML. And I typed my first Hello World, and I felt like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I can't believe this. This is amazing. And it's been a tough and exciting journey after that, especially learning coding so later in life. But I try to remember that first moment of excitement and hope and like believing about all the possibilities. And so I try to stick to that whenever it gets really tough. So I will choose Stacy next.
Hi guys. I joined the tech world like super late, and I'll be honest, it was through quarantine. I was like, I live on my own. I needed something to keep me busy. I was on YouTube, and then I found this YouTuber. She worked with HTML. I was like, oh my goodness, this looks so cool. And I started dabbing in it myself. But my first, time coding was in the web browser with is it Free Code Camp? Yes, I believe it's Free Code Camp, where we in the web browser we wrote Hello World. And then from there, then I started researching with what's it called? Flatiron, and then I joined Flatiron Software Engineering Coding Bootcamp. And ever since I've enjoyed it.
Nice.
Nick.
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, so my first Hello World program was probably a similar time frame to Stacey. I think I had like, when early on you you have very low information and you don't really know where to start. I think I had tried a few tutorials or like documentation where I was messing around in the terminal and I really had no idea what was going on. And I think I eventually stumbled upon, it was either Free Code Camp or Code Academy. It was a video-based tutorial program. I wish I could remember the name of the teacher because he was actually really great, a great place to start. But yeah, it was with JavaScript, and he basically walked you through like setup. And so I think that was really, once I got past the kind of barrier of setup, it was nice. And that's why, you know, people say that JavaScript has a lot of issues in terms of like, you know, developing practices that might not be the most efficient for you later on. But I think JavaScript's a great language because you get that immediate feedback as a programmer to see something pop up in the console your first day, you know. So that was probably like 2021, I want to say. And I got through that course and then kind of got as far as I could on my own and did a boot camp pretty recently, like, you know, ended about 3 months ago. So that was my experience.
Nice. And I do agree that when I was learning to code and I was using Ruby, like it's more removed from you as a casual user if you're not using JavaScript as your learning environment, because you don't use any of the tools that you would in another compiled language as a casual computer user of any kind. So web development, I find working with people has been like, I know what a browser is. I can learn how to open a panel and type something in the console log to get feedback. That's a lot more familiar and a lot more requires a lot less of learning about programming to get some kind of proof that you're doing something at all or something, whether it's correct or incorrect. So I do appreciate that about it. Great stuff. I'm glad to learn more about all of you always. But let's move on to our demos, which, if I can remember the pairs correctly, we have Stacy. Wait, hold on. Stacy and Shuveksha going with number 6. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to go first?
Sure. So Stacy, are you ready?
Sure. That's just
Yeah.
stuff in my face, people. Sorry.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm sharing my screen. So
We were tasked with implementing a you want to go to the next I think it's
no, it's stuck. Oh yeah, there you go.
with being able to invite family or friends to an existing shopping list. The assignments we basically did, a user is able to share or invite others to an existing list by entering an existing user's email address in a dedicated form. We implemented a new feature that allows users to invite, of course, to the shopping list. We created a form using an email ID, sorry. We created a form with label input field for entering the user's email ID. We structured a share list button that can be activated using both the mouse and the key and the enter key. And we added feedback functionality to display success or error messages for list sharing and email validity.
So I'm talking about now testing criteria. So first we will be signing in with an email account and click on the list to be shared. Please note that the user can only share their own list. And then we'll navigate to manage list page and input, and we'll enter the email address for the recipient and click on share button. If an email address exists, a success alert will appear. And if an error message is shown, if invited email user doesn't exist, or if the list has already been shared with that email address. So these are the code changes that we did in the manage list. So we added some handle share function in here with catch and alert, and also the form with label and input field and a button called share list. So these are the changes that we did in Firebase.js file. With all the using promise with reject and resolve. That means that's successful or it's an error. And this is the app.js changes code. We added a user as a prop in the manage list. So now demo of the app. This is the shopping list app that we have. Sorry, I'm signed in. Let me sign out first. So at first we would sign in, and here's the my list. And if I want to share the snack, so I would click snack in here, and this is the value that we are getting. So we go to manage list and say I would like to share this with Stacy. So I added Stacy's email address and share it to the list so that we get an alert that it's been shared to Stacy. So if we write like that's not in our database, like abc.gmail.com, then we get an alert that this email address doesn't exist. So if I already shared this to Stacy, so if I'm trying to stay with her again and click this, so it pops up like alert that this has been already shared. So, and I'm going to show with the Firebase. So if I refresh this, and this was my list of the stacks, and if I go to this was my list, and if I go to Stacy's, it's on hers. Now cleaning supplies is her list, and if it also is on my list, but Stacy actually created that. What if I go and try to share this cleaning supply with like maybe Megan and share this, it pops up that you are not owner of the list and cannot be shared. This is all what we did in this issue number 6. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Do you want to also demo that what we just added this morning about if in case we try to share with a user we've already shared with?
Yeah, I already showed that.
Okay, you did.
Yeah, I tried to reshare this again to you, like snack menus list, and share this to you again. It pops up that it has already been shared.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Lots of cool stuff in this one. Any comments, questions? No one has comments or questions, or were they all hashed out in the PR, in the reviews?
I do on Jen, great job by the way first. But I have a question on Jenny's comments.
Oh boy.
Because I also, and Jenny, I hope you feel better.
Thank you guys.
So on the part about the async, making the share list, because I also, and I could be wrong, but I thought that if, and I want to understand this, if the share list is an async function in the back end, then making it an async function in the front end usually makes sense, but I wasn't sure. And then you mentioned something similar about that. So I wanted to learn more about what your thoughts were.
Yeah, if we want, we can pull up the code. Maybe I can explain what I was trying to, I think, insinuate without giving you the full answer. Whoever was sharing just now, do you have like the code handy?
I can share my screen, the one with the code. This one.
Okay,
Megan, if you're talking to us, we couldn't hear you just now when you said something. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Jenny, but it looked to me like Megan was talking. I couldn't tell.
Oh, Megan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
We can hear you now. We couldn't hear you when you were
okay.
talking before.
Whoops. Can you zoom in if you do Command plus just to make it a little bigger?
Is this good?
Yeah. That's perfect.
So, I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with like async await, right? Like, what does it mean when you make a function async? Basically, like if you want the function to do things in order, you can make it async, and then you can add like functions inside it that usually add when you want to wait for something, right? So like in this case, waiting for things to come back from the database. In this case, like on line 149, like await get doc, like that line, like we would have to wait for that to return before being able to move on to the next line. So I think, what was the other file? Was it like share list that you were pulling this into?
It's a managed list.
Oh yeah, manage list. So I believe it was the handle share. Previously in your code, you were like handle share wasn't a async function, so you were just kind of calling share list by itself, like calling share list, and then you had another function under it. In that case, like what do you think would happen? Like if you have a share list, if the share list function is there, but that's an asynchronous function, right? Like that we just saw. But if you're just calling it without waiting for it, does anyone know what would kind of happen to like the other code after that?
Yeah, I tried with after your comment, other code after that didn't run. So that's why I went back and did this in the other way.
The other code, I think you had something like
I had like a wait here and async here when I was trying to catch the error and that wasn't running. So I changed everything into like promise, resolve, and reject.
That's interesting. I think if you had sorry, if you had made this an async function and then awaited share list, it would wait for share list to complete and return whatever it was going to return, whether it's an error or a success message, whatever. It would wait for that, and then it would move on to the next list, the next line. So in theory, it should have done that. I'm not sure why it wasn't working for you. And maybe another day we can like dig into that more. But I think my comment was saying like you could have made this an async function and then added await in front of share list. But how you're doing it here is totally fine as well. It's basically doing the same thing, right? You're waiting for share list to return, and then you're saying, then do this, and then if there's an error, catch this and do whatever. So it's like functionally the same. I was just suggesting like a different way of doing it, async await. I think, I don't know, either way is fine. I usually do async await just because it like looks a little cleaner. Especially here, like if you want to chain other actions onto the share list, it might get a little messy, right? You'll have to do like dot then and then do this and then dot then do this after that. Does that kind of clear up the question? Oh, I love this guy, Josh W. Como, whatever. Yeah, his stuff is really good. I shared it with when I was in my cohort. We looked at a bunch of stuff too.
One thing I want to add, in case just to make sure I think I'm following what Jenny's saying. If you look at this sample of code we have on this screen from lines 12 to 34, those two functions are doing the same thing with different syntax. And so I think what Jenny was getting at is that you should be able to accomplish the syntax in handle submit in handle share. It's not a problem that you didn't. It's up to you to do what works for you, right? Get whatever you need to do to make the code function correctly. But it should be possible to make these two functions look the same. And you're welcome to use whichever syntax, whether it's promise with then and catch or async await, that works for you. And sometimes you'll pick one because it's easier to reason about one or the other. But it is possible in theory, unless something is weird that we don't know about, to make these two functions look the same. Does that make sense? And also, Jenny, was I following you correctly?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it's a long ramble. If we want, we can try to change the code here right now. If you make
How about we go through our other demos and then come back to this if we have time? I just want to make sure we go through our no, you're fine. I just want to make sure we get through our retros and everything.
Yes, let's do that.
Could also be a good office hours deep dive. We can
Totally.
do that next week.
We can all sit and read Josh's blog post in real time together. All right, who's our next? Well, the only options we have are Dory Bell and Nick, so let's go with that.
All right, let me just share here. And Dory Bell is going to kick us off.
All right, hi everybody. So we were tasked with demoing issue number 7. And this is brought to you by Doribel Tercero Parker and Nick Rocco. Next slide, we will be discussing the assignment and the steps that we took to complete the assignment. So our assignment was to filter a shopping list. The assignment was to create a form for searching first and then filtering the shopping list by item name. So what steps did we take? We first added a form to the list view right above the displayed shopping list. Then then the form was to include a label and a button for clearing the form that appears when the text is entered. So the button was connected to the search state. What we did to achieve this was to first import useState into list.jsx component. We then created state for search input, as well as a label input element that was tied to state. Then we conditionally rendered a clear button with an X when the search input is not empty. And thanks to EJ's feedback, we also ended up adding an area label to make sure that the button is accessible. Initially, we used the chain method to, we chained a filter method to the map method in the JSX body. But thanks to Jenny's feedback, we decided to create a filter constant outside of the JSX body. We do have questions about that for later to Jenny to make sure that it actually is efficient. But next, we're gonna talk about testing steps. I think that's you, Nick. Do you want me to do it?
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take it from here. Thanks, Doribel. So we got, first you're going to sign in using your Google account. You're going to navigate to homepage and click on the test list. Then you will navigate to list page and click on search items label to focus to the input. Inside the input, begin typing an item name. The displayed list should filter based on your input. To clear the input, click the X button. So, sorry, I just need to move our little window here so I can read what I'm looking at. Okay, so as you can see, we've added a few functions here. We have the handle input change and the clear search input. These are both going to be used for basically handling the state, which is search input. So as you type, this input is tied to the state, and so the state is going to change as the user enters into the field. Then you can see, I believe we still have the filter in this picture. This was before we altered it. So,
No.
oh no, this is the new one. This is the new one. Never mind. Okay. So yeah, and then based on that, we have a filter list, which is Doribel was just describing, which is going to filter through the search input. And then if it's basically, it's saying like, if it's empty, then just return everything. But if there is something entered in there, turn them both to lowercase, or sorry, turn the search input to lowercase and also turn the item list to lowercase so you can compare them to see if the text you've entered is included in the list item. And then you get a filtered list. And then we use that filtered list to map out, map through the data and display or render a list item component for each list item. Okay, and next we've got the live demo. So let me just come out of this for a second, come over here. And so I'm going to first click on test list so that I actually have a list in our set list path that we can look at. And then I will navigate over to list. And let's say we want to look at just tortillas. If I type in TOR, we get tortillas. Now, this is not just what the list item starts with. For instance, if I look at yuca, I can type in CC here and we just get yuca. So it matches any contiguous string that is included inside of the list item name. And so that's how the filtering works. Let me go back to our presentation here. And that brings us to questions and suggestions.
Love it. I look forward to these gifts every week. Any questions or comments?
want to ask Jenny if that was what you had in mind, or if we spent quite some time and we were like, how do we make this code efficient? And then Nick was like, oh, notation. And I was like, ah. So we just wondered what your thoughts are.
I just want to say what you guys had before was like beyond completely fine. I was just trying to be like nitpicky and get you guys thinking about other things. But I think for something so simple like this, like the differences are pretty minimal. I would say the biggest difference is like, oh, thank you, Shiveksha. I must sound really awful. I would say like, I don't know. I was always taught like to try to make the code like as readable as possible, like making it readable, making things like performant is important, but making things readable is also very important. So that's where my note came from, was like instead of doing your filtering in your JSX directly, you can think about maybe pulling out the logic, creating a separate function, and then just in your JSX making it just do just mapping over the data that's already been pre-filtered, right? And in that case, you could also like do other things with that function, like if you wanted to pull that function into other places, or you can even pull it into like a util file, and if you wanted, if your app was bigger and wanted to use it in different places in the app. Also, if it's a separate function, you could test it, right? You could write a test for it. That's like, that would make more sense if this function was much more complicated than it is. Right now it's doing something very simple. So that's why I was saying like what you guys had was completely fine. But I guess like performance wise, I want to say it's like not that big of a difference, especially with something so small. Maybe I feel like if you wanted to make it super performant and not like do this filtering every time you render, you can maybe use a use memo or something, so that it like saves whatever you had. It like checks for the difference since the last time you rendered. So you won't be like filtering every time the components re-rendered. I don't know if that makes sense. But I would say like for this, it's very minimal. I think performance wise, it's probably not too big of a difference. In this case, yeah, like I was more concerned about making things readable and kind of sectioning out the logic in a way that makes more sense, which is what I feel like every mentor I've ever had has like told me about back in my days. Does that kind of clear things up?
It does. Thank you for clearing that up. I think that makes a lot more sense. So really what this is more about like encapsulation of logic for the possibility of reusability and just readability, having things kind of broken out into these steps. We were kind of thinking at first, we're like, oh, maybe it's not efficient to filter and then map every time if you don't need to. But I was like, oh, wait, but we're still filtering and mapping regardless. So we were kind of confused by that. But I think that makes more sense. Just, like for another programmer to come in, this would just look a lot cleaner. And also they can reuse filter list if they want.
Yeah, I mean, you're setting state with every input change, so you'll be re-rendering regardless.
Yeah.
Memo is really helpful.
Any other mentors want to jump in?
Just to yes and what Jenny said, I agree with everything that she said about what's performant and what's important. The most important thing over everything else, I think, is truly making your code legible to other people, because that you can't work on a team if your peers can't understand what you've written. Performance is important, but at the scale at which you're operating, it's good to know Jenny's suggestion for caching results and not rendering everything every single time. But this list is so small that it doesn't matter what you've got going on. For the most part, it's good to try to wait to optimize until you see a problem with performance, or until you get reports that someone can't do something with the software you shipped. It's good to try to like preempt certain things if doing so is like the easy path for you as a developer. But if caching your results and avoiding rendering takes 300 lines of more code just to make it more efficient, is that worth your time? Not saying that's what it would cost you to do now with this example. but we want to try to get things to work well, and then also try to find a way to make them look legible. So Jenny's key suggestion, as far as I understand it, was just to pull stuff into the variable so that it's easier to know what's doing what, if I am following correctly.
Right. Exactly.
That was really helpful.
Yeah.
Megan, do you want to add anything or any questions from anyone else? Sorry, Nick.
No worries.
I think the one other thing that I'll add to piggyback off of EJ, what you were saying about like considering how much effort it's going to take. The other thing I would consider is like, is it worth spending the time on this for the performance benefit that we gain? Like, how much of a difference is it actually going to make? Because from like the end user perspective, you can't really tell the difference between like 200 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds. Like it's not that big of a difference. So yeah, just as part of the like cost benefit analysis, things to think about.
Great.
One other thing, just because I can never stop talking, is that optimizations like this are important to know about, so you can reason about them in the future because they'll come up at some point. But in the face of the fact that we're using React, this change almost won't matter because React itself adds a lot of weight and complexity and like slowness to the processors that your machines are using that a non-framework version of this app would not have. So you're already dedicating CPU cycles to the complexity of a framework that almost cannot be overshadowed by something like this at this scale.
Sure.
Now, if the list was hundreds or thousands of items long, that's a different story. But at this scale, comparing what else you have going on, it's negligible. And I'm a hater also of frameworks, so that's a whole separate topic for another day.
Right. I guess I have a quick question going off of what we've just discussed. Use memo. I haven't come across that. Is that an example of the concept of memoization, where you're like saving a value so that you don't have to recompute it later?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
We can talk about that at length in the future, but I do want to go on to our retro just to make sure we have time to say nice things about everyone to each other. So I will share my screen, and actually what I'll do first is I will link everyone to the board, and if you need some time to add stuff, I'm going to give you the length of one song as your DJ, and then we'll move on. Okay. So this should be our current board, and then I'm going to try being DJ for a second. Let's see.
Can I ask a question about the retros?
Sure.
So I ended up adding to the link we had from last week for week number 2. So it's okay, we don't have to go open that one up, but is the expectation to do these every 2 weeks, or
yes.
If we find anything? Okay.
They're every 2 weeks, and they're different boards just so that we have different collections of feedback. And it's totally okay that you went to the wrong one. I did the same thing actually when I was first writing my feedback.
For today, I did the right one, but last week I expected that we were going to have to fill them out. So I shout out Stacy in the last one just in case.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty normal too. It's usually like the retro, you're reflecting on everything that's happened between this retro and the last retro. So if you work in 2 week sprints, that's pretty normal.
All right, the song is starting, and after that, you'll be locked out. I'm just kidding, but the song is starting now, I promise. Hold on, what is going on?
When I had you to myself, I didn't want you around. Those pretty faces always made you stand out in the crowd. But someone picked you from the bunch. One glance was all it took. Now it's much too late for me to take a second look. Oh, oh, baby, give me one more don't even want around. Oh, baby, give me one more chance. Won't you please let me back in your heart? Oh, darling, I was blind to let you go. Now that I see you, it is gone. Oh, baby, give me one more chance. Won't you please let me back in your heart now? Oh, darling, I was blind to let you go. Now that I see
Anyone need more time? Or are we good to go? Okay. Anyone who is not good to go? Okay. I'm taking the silence as assent to interrupting this lovely singer.
Who is this? I was gonna ask before we.
This is Lake Street Drive.
Nice.
I have more for future DJ sessions.
Love it.
Yeah, I didn't want it to end.
Yeah.
I'll give you all a link later. Okay, so we have a lot on this board, and my thinking is that because there's some stuff in actual feedback in the third column, unless there's something you really, really want to say as far as like giving a compliment or an appreciation, I think we should focus on the discussion that'll come out of the what could be improved. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up first?
I've got two in here. They're mostly about the demos, which I think have been going really, really well. You all are doing the best demos that I've ever seen out of a collab lab cohort. So great job. The two pieces of feedback that I have are specifically around like images. One is for the code. Like I know we've been showing the code in screenshots in the slide decks, which works, but one thing that's tough about that is like you can't zoom in, and then if like somebody, like if this were a demo on like a real large team project, like here we've all sort of seen what we've been working on, so we know what's going on more. But on a real project, you might be demoing something that other developers didn't work on and don't really know what they're looking at. So I find that having the code part of the demo be in the actual code editor makes it a little bit more flexible when you are talking. Like if somebody has a question of like, oh, what is this? You can go directly to it, or you can like look at something else. So it would be good for the next couple maybe to practice getting used to that. It's a little bit scarier because it's not perfectly scripted, but it's good to practice the dance of it all. What was the other one? Oh, and then the other thought that I had EJ, go ahead.
I'm going to add on to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll.
Well, I was going to move on to the other slide thing that I wrote.
This is subject to what you all want to do, and I also would like Megan's opinion on what I'm about to say. But I think it would also help maybe to try to itemize your code changes less in your slides, in your decks, because for the most part,
what itemized means?
For the most part, I think demos are going to be facing product people and not other software developers. And you do want to go over the code for the software developers in your audience, because we are all software developers who will follow what you're saying. But you can do that in sharing your code, like Megan is talking about. You don't need to make bullet points saying we did this thing with the code and then this thing with the code and then this thing with the code. We will see that. And you can be broad at first with the code changes you're covering. And then if someone has a question, you drill in and you really, really give details. That will cut maybe like 5 minutes from each of your demos, I think, which is a good use of everyone's time. Megan, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And also, like, when you're talking through the code changes, like EJ is saying, you can see in the pull request the comprehensive list of every change that you made. But for the demos, if your audience is the software developers on your team, like, it's good to think about what are the key takeaways, like what did we learn, like the conversations that we had about async and await, and like the ARIA label stuff. Like, those are good opportunities to be like, hey, here's this context that we as the pair developed on this ticket while we were working on it, and let's communicate that with the rest of the team so that we're all on the same page moving forward, about what to do if this comes up again.
Yeah, as another example from what Megan is saying, you could talk about the code for a novel concept that you're interested in the code base that's important for everyone to know about. Or you can say, Nick, you could be like, we implemented our first memo in this pull request. This is the code. This is what it looks like. Look at it. Look how cute it is. And we all move on. You don't necessarily need to talk about every single detail in the code you've changed because your developers have already looked at it. Unless, again, you get a question that you think is worth talking about with the team as a result of your demo, and then you can drill in. Does that make sense? And go ahead, Doorbell.
Possible. Thank you. That's really helpful to show us what a short demo would look like that's geared towards product managers. I would be very interested in seeing.
Megan, we want to write one sometime? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll find a thing to demo.
Let's do it. Megan, you have one more thing you want to bring, but I'm gonna forget to say this if I don't say it. So I do want to give one shout out to Jenny for her really thorough and thoughtful feedback on everyone's PRs. It's been really cool to see the feedback you give and like how helpful it's been and the way that everyone's discussing everything. So great job. And great job everyone, obviously. But and go ahead, Megan. You had another thing you wanted to go through.
Yeah, Jenny, were you going to say something?
Oh, just no problem. It's my pleasure being very nitpicky about your code, but just know that it's out of the greater good or whatever. Just yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it's great. It's like ways that you could shine a little bit brighter than you already do.
Yes.
Let me reread what this was. Oh, yeah, the other thing that I was thinking about for the demos, like when we're talking about what features that we added, like one thing that I try to do as somebody who likes visuals, is like if you say this is what we added, you could add in a screenshot of just like this is what it looks like, because sometimes reading the words it takes a little bit longer to be like, what does that mean? But if you see it, you're like, oh yeah, it's right there it is. And then for the actual demo, the live demo, they'll get to see it again, but at least they've got some sort of mental framework of like, this is roughly what we're talking about. Yeah.
Any other questions about that? Oh, sorry, Megan, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna check if we had any questions about that or thing we want to discuss about the feedback. And we can record some action items maybe to summarize what our suggestions were too. Like we'll write some down in Slack as well. But any questions, comments? Awesome. Great work. You all did a wonderful job this week as always, and we're going to move on to issue assignment.
There was a third one that somebody else wrote.
Oh, there was a third one. You're so right. Oh, Nick, please go ahead if you want to talk about your thing.
Sure. I mean, mine is more one for the future. We kind of touched upon it today, but I just I think it would be nice to take some time as a team to kind of just go through and make sure that we're using similar patterns and UI choices, just so the code is, just to make the code more legible and easier to understand for other people. But this isn't really, there's not much you can do when we're as we're going through it. I think it's something that we can come back to that I think would be helpful.
I do think that echoes something Jenny already said in one of her PRs, actually, that there are different UI mechanisms being used to give feedback, and it would be nice to homogenize and build a consistent pattern around this. So I do agree. And we can use maybe an office hours to start touching on like some commonalities in our code. or we can do a bit of a code retro each week if we have time. That's something we can go over a little bit, like talk about what's different and how we could converge later if we wanted to. One more thing I want to say about my earlier feedback with the demos is these demos, for the most part, should be short. So if you're building them with your partner, try timing yourself to 5 minutes and see if you can hit that, because we want to budget 15 minutes for things to be longer than planned, of course, but try to target 5 minutes so that in total, our demo time is 10 minutes. And that'll help you get a sense for what's really important. And if we try this and you feel like you're missing something you think is important to share, we can always iterate on what we're requiring. But my suggestion is to, as I said before, I know this is a vague requirement, and we'll try to demo this later, but think of a product audience. Think of people who are trying to see what your application does and the features you've built into it. And then supplementarily, you talk about the code changes that are really novel and really important for your developer audience. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Now it's issue time, unless someone wants to speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back. Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Delayed, but just going back to like when you start thinking about making things more consistent as you kind of work. Like if maybe it's early to think about like UI components, but I would definitely start thinking about like making things more consistent within the code. So for example, in your Firebase functions, right? Like make sure if you make an update to the function, make sure it like returns errors in the same way, like with the same language. I saw an update this week. I forgot who it was. Now you're returning promises directly, right? So that's one way of doing it. I would make sure that whatever you guys decide on doing, make sure it's just consistent throughout every function in the Firebase file, at least. If you return promises directly in one function, I would do the same in the others, but you kind of have to like talk to each other and agree on a method, maybe just by yourselves. Maybe you can return an object with like the status, right? Status is true or false, and return a message. So that's another option. But yeah, just talk to each other, agree on something, and make sure that it's like consistent across all of your updates. Sorry, that's all. Continue.
No, I agree. And going back to what you said about the UI components, it is a little early to think about trying to build a library of components. But if you're looking for candidates as like a very broad rule of thumb, if you're doing something 3 times in different places, that's a good guess that you have a component being made or potential for one. So if we're doing 3 different kinds of notifications, how can we make them all hold hands and be similar, as an example? So what would a consistent notification look like? How could it work well for the different cases in which we're showing notifications? The simplest version of that is to show an alert dialog from the browser, because it's accessible, it's clear, it interrupts whatever the user is doing, it's free, basically. But is there one that we would like to add to our UI that comes from us and is designed by us and things like that? Okay, I think we'll move on to issues. Finally, I know you're all so excited to look at GitHub together. Let me go back over here and share my hello. Oh, okay. I know what happened. Let's try. I was closing all these tabs and then it got stuck. Let's see. I had only 10 tabs open. Let's not get caught up on that. Okay, I'll have to go back. I'm going the long way. Thankfully, we're at the top of the list. Okay. I'm getting there. You'd think that I would pull this up knowing that we'll always end up here, but guess what I don't do every single week? Okay, so we are assigning number 8 and 9, if you can believe it. Also, we had a presentation that we just didn't do that I didn't know about. Or no, that's next week. Just kidding. Okay, we'll do it next week. Cool. No problems. I didn't forget anything. We've got 8 and 9, which are for 8. We have, as a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item.
Screen. Sorry, EJ. You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not?
No.
Wait, I see it.
Oh, wait. That for me on Zoom, there's a little tab at the top that I have to click on. It's like there's a meeting tab that shows all our little faces.
You're right. That's okay. Now I see it.
Yeah.
Now I see it too. That's new.
Oh, weird. I wonder why it got relegated to a tab. Even though weird. Okay, but are we all checked in? We can all see my screen. Okay, cool. For issue number 8, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. So this is your onboarding essentially. And I've already forgotten who is doing it. We got Stacy and Nick doing this one, unless there are objections. So the criteria for this are in the list view, when there are no items to display, we should show a prompt, for example, a button that invites the user to add their first item. Now, because this is so simple and short of scope, you can go a little bit further and like introduce the app and say like what it's about, what you can do a little bit. And we can iterate on that later once we're designing and finalizing all the features and everything. But that way, we're not just kind of throwing the user into a bunch of UI features without any explanation of what's happening or why they would want to use our fancy new product. Any questions? I almost did what Megan always does. Almost, but I caught myself.
Yeah, I guess I'm maybe like looking at the details would explain this. But I'm seeing, so this is, when you navigate to the list page, it prompts you how to get started entering things into your list. But does this also apply to creating your first list? Is that part of it? Like, a user their first time they'll come onto the home page and they won't have any lists yet. So is that part of this, or are we just specifically working with the list page?
That's a good question. I think this issue predates when we re-architected the app to do this multiple list view. So Jenny, what do you think? Did you in your cohort, did you sort of expand the introductory text to cover both views, or?
Let me think. I think in the first pass through, we just did what the acceptance criteria told us to do. I think that other part, the homepage, let's call it, we added during our like design weeks later on. I don't know if that's covered by another issue. I would say like if it's not, then I don't know, feel free to, especially if you're not hitting like the 6 hours in the week. So yeah, but I don't think we went beyond the description.
Here's my proposal. If doing the thing in the core AC is very quick, you're welcome to add more stuff, but also keep that time boxed reasonably. Don't go ham on trying to be too thorough with your introductions or your explanations of the UI, because it will change and our features will change. Additionally, if you get done quickly and you want to help your other pair with their issue, you can do that too. But also we want to be mindful of your time and make sure that you're not spending a lot of time on this. We'll always have more time later on to come back and polish everything.
Can I also share that we have an issue that's Suveksha and I created issue number 3, which is just to render, conditionally render a message, I think, for signing in. So I don't know, that's something that we could also tackle towards the end, or if you'll have time. I think it's 3.1, I believe.
Yeah, it was earlier. It was later on in the list. Let's see. Real quick.
It was regarding authentication.
Yeah, authentication.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I remember this now. There's a bug where we know that the user can't use certain pages if they're not logged in, so we could hide them from the user if they're not logged in. You could do that also. I think let's chat about this on Slack. If you end up having time, why don't you just ping everybody and then we'll agree that you're taking on this other issue or something else like that. That way we all have some visibility into what's going on. Okay, issue number 9. This unfortunately has more things going on. So we're seeing some imbalance, which is real world, unfortunately. You'll get one issue one week that's like takes 5 seconds, and then one that takes up over your entire life for a month. Ask me how I know. This one is to I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased, so the app can learn how often I buy different things. Users need a UI that allows them to mark their items as purchased, so they can track what on their list they do and do not need to buy. The AC for this, in summary, are we want to be able to check off our list items, so they're no longer just text; they're checkboxes with labels, of course. We're also going to make the update item function in Firebase do things. And there are notes about this in the ticket. Any questions or concerns from Suveksha or Doribel? I agree with that.
I remember I remember now. I remember this week. This issue is definitely like a lot juicier than the other one. I remember because I
Mhm.
had the other one and I felt very bored. But I would say maybe this week then, if the other team finishes early, check in with the other pair and see if they need help. Maybe it's like a good exercise instead of whoever is assigned to this, instead of reaching out to mentors, if you have questions, reach out to the other pair first, see if they have some teamwork to offer. Just a suggestion, but I don't think this is too challenging. I don't remember, but definitely it's like a significant more amount of time, I'd say. So just plan around that.
On top of what Jenny said, I would say ping everybody when you have questions, and then we will wait in the wings for your peers to answer first, and then come in with help if you need. But one thing I want to see more of is maybe more visibility in Slack to what everyone's doing, and just more discussion that we can all look back on and learn from, rather than being in DMs necessarily, because that way we have a record of what everyone learned, and we can brag about you better in blog posts and things like that.
Adding on to that,
Any
it's also my personal soapbox, like to have conversations in public channels as much as possible, because then other people, like if people onboard onto your team later and they have the same question, they can search it in Slack and your conversation will pop up, so that you don't have to keep getting asked the same 3 questions over and over and over again. Ask me how I know that.
And to be clear, you're always welcome to DM someone in private if there's any reason that you think that should be done. We're not going to stop you from that. But if we're talking about team stuff, you can just be public. Be as noisy as you think is reasonable in Slack, and then do it more than you think is reasonable, because you are not bothering anybody. The channel exists for us to all have public discussions and learn from each other's work.
My general rule of thumb is like, if this is something that would be helpful for somebody else to know at some point in the future, then do it in a public channel.
I agree. Okay, thank you all for staying 4 minutes past. I almost said bedtime. It is only noon. It is only noon on the West Coast. Any questions or things to address before we adjourn for the day? Awesome. Well, great work this week again. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's work at the end of the week, and we will, of course, see you on Tuesday.
Good luck,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you all.